Most men think attraction is easy to recognize. She smiles at you. She flirts with you. She tells you she likes you. Simple, right? Not always. Sometimes a woman can feel something for a man and still try to hide it. She may have reasons to hold herself back. Maybe she's afraid of getting hurt. Maybe she's unsure what you feel. Maybe the timing isn't right. Maybe she's been disappointed before and doesn't want to make herself vulnerable again. And when that happens, something fascinating can occur. Her words may try to stay controlled, but her behavior becomes harder to control. She may tell herself not to look at you too long, then catch herself watching you when she thinks you're not paying attention. She may decide to keep things casual, then somehow find another reason to continue the conversation. She may act completely normal around everyone else, but become noticeably different when you're nearby. And here's the part most men miss. A single behavior means almost nothing. The real clue is the pattern of contradictions. She says she's fine, but keeps looking for your attention. She acts casual, but remembers tiny details about you. She tries to create distance, but repeatedly finds reasons to come closer. That's where things become interesting. Because when someone is genuinely fighting an emotion, the conflict itself can become visible. But before you interpret any of these signs as proof that a woman wants you, understand something important. Body language is not a secret code. A smile isn't a confession. Eye contact isn't a promise. Touch isn't automatically attraction. And nervousness doesn't always mean romantic feelings. Context matters. What we're looking for is something much more meaningful. Consistent behavior that changes specifically around you. So let's look at the signs, because the first one is often so subtle that most men don't even realize it's happening. A woman who is trying to hide her feelings may become unusually aware of where you are, not necessarily staring at you constantly. Sometimes it's the opposite. She looks away quickly when you catch her looking. You enter the room and her attention shifts. You're speaking with someone else and she notices. You walk away, and a few moments later, she somehow knows where you went. That heightened awareness can happen when someone has become emotionally interested in another person. But here's the twist. The strongest clue isn't that she looks at you. It's what happens after you catch her looking. Does she suddenly become shy? Does she smile? Does she look away and then check again later? Does her expression change? Or does absolutely nothing change? That's why one glance isn't enough. Patterns matter. And if you've noticed that her attention seems to find you again and again, keep watching. Because the second sign is even more revealing. She starts creating small reasons to interact with you. Maybe she asks a question she could easily answer herself. Maybe she comments on something you're doing. Maybe she sends you something that reminds her of a conversation you had. Maybe the conversation should have ended 5 minutes ago, but somehow it keeps going. These aren't necessarily romantic signals. But when someone is trying to suppress feelings, creating harmless opportunities for contact can become a way of staying connected without admitting why. She may not say, "I wanted to talk to you." Instead, she finds a reason, and sometimes the reason is almost ridiculously small. That's because the real motivation isn't the question. It's the interaction. She wanted another moment with you. And that distinction matters. Think about it. If she asks you something and immediately leaves, that's one thing. But if the question becomes a 10-minute conversation, then another question, then a joke, then a story, and suddenly neither of you seems eager to end the interaction, you're seeing something different. Again, not proof, but a pattern worth noticing. And here's where many men make a mistake. They become excited and immediately push forward. They start messaging more, they flirt harder, they become more available, they assume the hidden feelings have finally been discovered. Slow down. If a woman is genuinely uncertain about her feelings, Pressure can make her retreat. The better response is to remain calm. Match the energy, let her participate. If she wants the interaction to continue, let her continue it. Don't do all the work for her, because the next sign is about exactly that. She begins remembering things you didn't expect her to remember. You casually mention that you prefer a certain kind of coffee. Weeks later, she remembers you tell her about an important meeting. She asks how it went. You mention something about your family. Later, she brings it up. Why does this matter? Because attention follows importance. People remember what matters to them. Of course, some people simply have excellent memories. So again, context matters. But when someone consistently remembers small details about you, while also seeking interaction and showing unusual awareness around you, the combination becomes more interesting. It suggests that you're occupying more space in her attention than an ordinary acquaintance might, and that's where attraction can sometimes begin revealing itself indirectly. Not through dramatic declarations, through memory, because when someone matters to you, their details stop feeling random. They become part of your mental world, and that brings us to the fourth sign. Her behavior around you becomes slightly different from how she behaves around everyone else. This is one of the most valuable things to observe. Don't compare her behavior with how she acts in your imagination. Compare it with how she actually behaves with other people. Maybe she's confident with everyone else, but becomes slightly nervous around you. Maybe she's serious with others, but playful with you. Maybe she talks freely with everyone, but becomes unusually careful about what she says to you. Maybe she teases everyone, but with you the teasing feels more personal. Maybe she normally leaves quickly, but around you she lingers. The difference is what matters, because attraction isn't necessarily about becoming a completely different person. Sometimes it's simply a small shift in behavior, a little more attention, a little more self-awareness, a little more emotional energy, and sometimes that energy creates an interesting contradiction. She may appear to pull away precisely because she feels herself getting closer. That's where the fifth sign appears. She sometimes creates distance after moments of connection. This is one of the easiest signs to misunderstand. You have a great conversation. She seems engaged. Maybe she becomes unusually open. Then suddenly, she's quieter. Her messages become shorter. She seems more distant, and you immediately think she's not interested, maybe, but not necessarily. Sometimes people create distance because the interaction affected them more than they expected. They suddenly become aware that they're becoming emotionally involved. And if they're afraid of that feeling, they may instinctively step back. But here's the important distinction. Healthy interpretation requires looking at the long-term pattern, not one day. If she repeatedly alternates between closeness and distance without any meaningful investment, don't create a romantic story around it. Mixed signals are not automatically hidden attraction. Sometimes mixed signals are simply mixed feelings. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is accept that uncertainty instead of trying to solve it. But if she consistently returns, reconnects, initiates again, and continues showing signs of emotional investment, the pattern becomes more interesting. Because the distance may not be rejection, it may be hesitation, and hesitation can have many causes. Fear, past experiences, timing, uncertainty about your feelings, or simply not knowing what she wants. That's why mature men don't chase every moment of distance. They give space. They allow clarity to emerge. And that calmness can be powerful, because if someone is fighting their feelings, pressure gives them a reason to run. Space gives them room to understand what they're actually feeling. Now here's where the sixth sign becomes especially revealing. She starts paying more attention to how you perceive her. Maybe she asks what you think about her appearance. Maybe she remembers something you complimented before. Maybe she subtly changes something after you've mentioned liking it. Maybe she becomes more conscious of herself when you're around. Again, none of these prove attraction. But consider the psychology. We usually care more about the opinions of people who matter to us. If your opinion becomes unusually important to her, it may suggest that your perception has gained emotional weight. And sometimes you can see this in the smallest moments. You compliment her, she remembers it, you notice a change. She seems pleased that you noticed. You express admiration for something about her personality. Later, she brings it up. Those moments can reveal something deeper than appearance. They show that your attention itself has value to her. And that's an important distinction. She may not simply want attention. She may want your attention. That's when the pattern becomes much harder to dismiss, but there is still one final sign. And it's arguably the most important because it has less to do with what she does with her body and more to do with what she does with her life. She starts making space for you. Think about how people behave when someone matters. They create room. They remember, they adjust, they make time, they find opportunities. They don't necessarily abandon everything else. But they begin making small choices that keep the connection alive. Maybe she suggests getting coffee. Maybe she asks when you'll be around. Maybe she includes you in plans. Maybe she checks whether you'll be somewhere. Maybe she finds a reason to continue a conversation later. That is investment. And investment is much more meaningful than body language alone. Because attraction without investment can remain fantasy. But when someone repeatedly chooses to spend time, attention, and emotional energy with you, you're looking at something more substantial. Now let's step back. What if you notice several of these signs? She watches you. She finds reasons to talk. She remembers details. She's different around you. She sometimes pulls away. She cares about your opinion. And she keeps making space for you. What should you do? This is where many men ruin everything. They decide they've solved the mystery. They become aggressive. They start testing her. They start saying things like, I know you like me, or you're obviously attracted to me. Don't do that. If she's already fighting her feelings, forcing her to admit them can make her defensive. Instead, create an environment where honesty feels safe. Be warm, be direct when appropriate, be respectful. Give her opportunities to communicate. And if you're interested, you don't have to hide behind endless guessing either. At some point, mature attraction requires honest communication, not manipulation, not psychological games, not trying to trigger jealousy, not pretending you don't care, just clarity, because there is something much more attractive than perfectly decoding a woman's body language. It's having the emotional maturity to communicate openly while respecting her freedom to choose. And here's the deeper truth. Sometimes a woman fights her feelings because she doesn't trust the situation. She may have been hurt before. She may not want another relationship. She may be afraid of losing independence. She may be unsure whether you feel the same. Or she may simply need time. If you recognize that, your response should not be pressure. It should be patience. Because genuine attraction doesn't need to be forced into existence. It needs room to become clear. And if her feelings are real, consistent connection usually reveals them over time. The woman who is interested doesn't have to perform a perfect confession. Her investment begins speaking. She finds you. She remembers you. She notices you. She makes room for you. She comes back. And when she feels safe enough, she stops fighting the connection and starts participating in it. That's the moment you should pay attention to. Not when you finally catch her looking. Not when she laughs at your joke. Not when she touches her hair, but when her choices consistently say, I want you in my world. That's much more powerful than any isolated body language signal. And if you're a man over 55, this lesson becomes even more important. You don't need to chase every woman who gives you attention. You don't need to prove that you're desirable. You don't need to become someone you're not. Maturity gives you another option. You can slow down, you can observe, you can communicate, you can let people reveal themselves. And you can choose relationships where interest is mutual instead of spending your energy trying to convince someone to feel something they don't. Because real attraction should not feel like a battle. It may contain uncertainty, it may contain nervousness, it may contain hesitation, but eventually there should be movement from both sides. That's what makes a connection real. So if you notice a woman acting differently around you, don't immediately assume you've discovered a secret. Look deeper, watch the pattern. Does she repeatedly seek your attention? Does she remember what matters to you? Does she behave differently around you? Does she sometimes pull away but consistently return? Does she care about your perception? Does she make space for you? If the answer is yes to several of these, there may be something worth exploring. But don't force the conclusion. Let the relationship tell you what it is. Because the most powerful attraction isn't the kind you have to chase. It's the kind where two people slowly realize that they keep choosing each other. And perhaps that's the real secret behind a woman who seems to be fighting her feelings. Her words may hesitate, her mind may debate, her fears may tell her to stay away. But when genuine connection keeps growing, her behavior often begins revealing what she's struggling to admit to herself. Not through one dramatic gesture, but through dozens of small choices, one conversation, one glance, one remembered detail, one reason to stay, one reason to come back, until eventually the question isn't whether she has feelings. The question becomes whether both of you are brave enough to be honest about them, because attraction can begin with a glance. It can grow through attention. It can deepen through trust, but it becomes meaningful only when two people are free to choose it. So don't chase the signal. Don't manipulate the moment. Don't force the confession. Build the kind of connection where honesty becomes easier than hiding. And if she truly has feelings she's been fighting, you may eventually notice something even more powerful than her body language. She stops trying to hide the fact that she wants you in her life, and when that happens, you won't need a secret formula to understand it. You'll simply know, because real interest doesn't just show itself in the way someone looks at you. It shows itself in the way they keep choosing to come back.